The gunshot echoed through the marble hallways like a death sentence. Elena's hands trembled as she gripped the mop handle, her knuckles white against the worn wood. From her position in the third-floor corridor, she could hear the shouting downstairs, the heavy boots of armed men rushing through rooms she'd spent years cleaning in silence. Glass shattered somewhere close. A woman screamed. Then silence fell over the Romano mansion like a shroud. She pressed herself against the wall, making herself smaller, invisible. That was her specialty. In 3 years of working in this house of blood and secrets, Elena had perfected the art of being nobody. The guards didn't see her. The boss's children walked past her like she was furniture. Even the other staff barely remembered her name. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the most feared man in the city was dying, and somehow, impossibly, everything was about to change. "Where is she?" The voice cut through the mansion like a blade. Marco, the head of security, his words sharp with urgency. "Find the night maid, now." Elena's breath caught in her throat. The mop clattered to the floor. They were looking for her, in a house full of lawyers, doctors, family members, and loyal soldiers. Why would anyone be looking for the maid who cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors? She'd spent 3 years making sure no one looked for her, no one noticed her, no one remembered she existed. Safety came from invisibility in a world where noticing the wrong thing could get you killed. Heavy footsteps approached. Elena considered running, but where would she go? The mansion sprawled across 5 acres, surrounded by walls and guards. She'd signed away her freedom the day she'd taken this job, desperate for money to pay her mother's medical bills. The Romano family didn't hire staff. They acquired them. "There!" A guard rounded the corner, his hand resting on his weapon. His eyes were cold, assessing. "You. The boss wants to see you." The words made no sense. In 3 years, Vittorio Romano had never once looked at her directly. She'd cleaned his office while he conducted business, invisible as always. She'd brought him coffee that other staff had prepared, setting it down without a word. She'd changed his sheets, dusted his shelves, and vanished before he noticed her presence. "There's been a mistake," Elena managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just... Move!" The guard grabbed her arm, not roughly but with the firmness of someone who wouldn't accept refusal. "He's asking for you by name, and he doesn't have much time." By name. The impossibility of it struck Elena as she was pulled down the grand staircase, past oil paintings of Romano ancestors whose eyes seemed to judge her every step. How did he know her name? She'd never introduced herself. Her employee file listed her as E. Moretti, just another number in the household accounts. The mansion's main floor was chaos barely contained. Men in expensive suits huddled in corners, speaking in low voices. The boss's 3 sons stood near the study, their faces masks of barely controlled anticipation. They looked like vultures waiting for a dying animal, circling but not quite brave enough to strike yet. The boss's ex-wife sat in the parlor, perfectly composed, her designer dress immaculate. She'd left Vittorio 10 years ago and never looked back. But she'd returned tonight like everyone else. Death drew crowds in the Romano world, especially when an empire was at stake. None of them looked at Elena as she was escorted past. To them, she truly was invisible. The guard stopped outside the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. The same room Elena had cleaned countless times, always in silence, always alone. 2 more guards stood at the door, their faces grim. "Everyone out," came a voice from inside. Weak, strained, but still carrying absolute authority. "Bring her in, alone." The doctor emerged first, shaking his head. Then the family lawyer, clutching his briefcase like a shield. They filed past Elena without acknowledgement, and she was pushed gently into the room. The door closed behind her with a finality that made her stomach drop. The master bedroom was dim, curtains drawn against the late evening sun. The smell of sickness hung in the air, mixing with expensive cologne and the faint scent of gun oil that never quite left rooms where dangerous men lived. Machines beeped softly near the massive 4-poster bed, monitoring a life that was slipping away. Vittorio Romano lay against white pillows that made his gray pallor more pronounced. At 65, he'd ruled the city's underworld for 4 decades. Men had died at his order. Businesses had flourished or failed based on his whims. Politicians took his calls. Police looked the other way. He'd built an empire on fear and blood, and now that empire waited outside his door like hungry wolves. His eyes were still sharp, though, still calculating. They found Elena and held her in place. "You can come closer," he said, his voice rough. "I won't bite. Not anymore." Elena took 3 small steps forward, her hands clasped in front of her like a shield. "Sir, I think there's been a confusion. I'm just the cleaning staff. If you need—" "Elena Moretti," he said her full name clearly, watching her reaction. 28 years old. You've worked in my home for 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. You take the night shift because the pay is marginally better, and you send every extra dollar to your mother in Queens. You read in the library when you think no one's watching. You've never stolen anything, never gossiped, never asked questions. You make yourself invisible. The accuracy of it all stole her breath. How do you... I know everything that happens in my house. A bitter smile crossed his face. I know which guards are loyal and which are waiting for me to die so they can switch sides. I know my sons are already dividing my assets. I know my lawyer has a copy of my will in that briefcase and 3 different groups who've offered him money to change it. I know the doctor gave me 3 days at most, probably less. He paused, his breath laboring. And I know you're the only person in this entire mansion who sees me as human. Elena wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in her throat. She thought of the times she'd found him alone in his study late at night, staring at old photographs, the way he'd sometimes say, "Thank you," so quietly, she wasn't sure she'd heard it. The book of poetry she'd found once, worn and clearly read many times, so at odds with his reputation. "I don't understand," she whispered. "I'm dying." He stated it plainly, without self-pity. "Cancer. Inoperable. I have days, maybe hours. The vultures are circling, waiting to tear apart. Everything I built. My children hate me. My wife left me. My friends were never really friends. And my empire?" He laughed, a sound that turned into a cough. "My empire will collapse into violence the moment I'm gone." "I'm sorry," Elena said, meaning it. Whatever he'd done, whatever blood stained his hands, dying alone was a cruelty she understood. "Don't be." He waved away her sympathy. "I made my choices. I knew the cost. But there's one thing I need to do before I go. One regret I can still fix." His eyes locked onto hers with sudden intensity. "And I need your help." Every instinct screamed at Elena to refuse, to back away, to run. Nothing good came from getting involved in Romano family business. She'd seen what happened to people who knew too much, who got pulled into schemes and power plays. Invisibility had kept her safe. This was the opposite of safe. But there was something in his eyes. Not the cold calculation of a crime lord, but the desperation of a man running out of time. "What do you need?" The words escaped before she could stop them. Vittorio reached for a glass of water with trembling hands. Elena stepped forward automatically, helping him drink. When he'd finished, he looked at her with something that might have been gratitude. "In my private study, there's a safe behind the painting of Venice. The combination is your birthday. Day, month, year." He paused, letting that sink in. "Inside, you'll find a red leather journal and a sealed envelope. I need you to read the journal, all of it, and then decide what to do with the envelope." "My birthday?" Elena's mind reeled. "How do you know—" "I know everything about you, Elena." His voice softened. "I've known for 3 years, since the day you arrived, terrified and desperate, willing to work in a criminal's house because your mother needed surgery and no legitimate employer would pay enough. You had 3 other job offers that week. You chose mine because I paid the most and asked the fewest questions." He drew a labored breath. "You chose to be invisible, and I chose to watch over the one invisible person in my house who had a good heart. The revelation sent ice through Elena's veins. 3 years. He'd been watching her for 3 years. She thought of every moment she'd believed herself alone, every time she'd let her guard down. Her hands shook. "Why me?" she managed. "Why not your family, your lawyers, your—" "Because they want something from me." The words were bitter. "Money, power, revenge, absolution. Everyone in my life wants something. But you?" He smiled sadly. "You just wanted to be left alone. You never asked for more. You never schemed. You were just kind. In small ways. Ways you thought no one noticed." Elena remembered returning a family photo she'd found fallen behind the desk, watering the plant in his study that was dying, leaving the library books organized the way she'd noticed he preferred them. Tiny things, meaningless things. "Those things mattered," Vittorio said, as if reading her thoughts. "More than you know. They reminded me that I used to be different. Before the blood, before the empire, before I became the monster everyone sees." His breathing grew more labored. "Please, Elena. I don't have time to beg. Get the journal, read it. Then you'll understand." She should refuse. Every logical thought in her head screamed at her to refuse. But she looked at this dying man, powerful and feared and utterly alone, and found she couldn't. "What happens when I read it?" she asked quietly. "The truth." His eyes closed, exhaustion clearly taking hold. "A truth I've kept hidden for 30 years. A truth that will change how you see everything. And then you'll have a choice to make." He forced his eyes open again. "But I can't force you. I can only ask. Will you do this for a dying man?" Elena thought of her mother, who'd raised her to see people as people, not positions. She thought of the loneliness in this room, the fear in his eyes beneath the authority. She thought of 3 years of invisible kindness that had been seen after all. "Yes," she whispered. Relief flooded Vittorio's face. "Thank you. Go now, before someone questions why you're here so long. And Elena?" He caught her hand with surprising strength. "When you learn the truth, don't trust anyone in this house with it. Not the guards, not the family, no one. Can you promise me that?" The fear in his voice was real. Elena nodded. "I promise." She left the room on shaking legs, past the guards who barely glanced at her, down the hallway to the private study she'd cleaned 100 times. Her heart hammered as she locked the door behind her and approached the painting of Venice, a beautiful cityscape she'd always admired. Behind it, as promised, was a safe. She entered her birthday with trembling fingers. The safe clicked open. Inside lay a red leather journal, worn with age and use. Beside it, a thick manila envelope, sealed with red wax bearing the Romano family crest. She pulled them both out, then hesitated. Once she opened these, there would be no going back to invisibility. No returning to the safety of being nobody. Vittorio had said she'd have a choice, but even holding these objects felt like she'd already made it. Elena took a deep breath and opened the journal. The first page was dated 32 years ago, written in younger, stronger handwriting. Her name was Sophia Reyes. She was 19. And loving her was the biggest mistake of my life. Elena sank into the leather chair and began to read. The journal unfolded like a story from another world. Young Vittorio Romano, heir to a growing criminal empire but not yet the feared boss he'd become. Sophia Reyes, daughter of a rival family's accountant, beautiful and idealistic, and completely wrong for him. They'd met at a charity gala. She'd called him out for his family's crimes. He'd fallen in love with her courage. Their romance was everything forbidden. Secret meetings, stolen moments, a love that could destroy both their families if discovered. Sophia had tried to change him, to pull him away from the violence. For a while it had worked. Vittorio had started refusing his father's orders, talking about going legitimate, about leaving the life. Then Sophia had gotten pregnant. Elena's hands tightened on the journal. The next entries were darker, desperate. Vittorio's father had found out. The rival family had discovered the relationship. Both sides had issued the same ultimatum: end it, or everyone pays. Sofia had refused to give up the baby. Vittorio had refused to give up Sofia. They'd planned to run, to disappear together, to start over somewhere his name meant nothing. They'd never made it. The entry from 31 years ago was barely legible, the handwriting broken by what might have been tears. They took her, my own father. He said it was for my own good, for the family's future. He said Sofia was a liability, that the baby would be used against me forever. He gave me a choice: the family or her. I chose wrong. I let him send her away. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd find her, that we'd still run. But I was a coward. I was 24 and afraid of my father, and I let the woman I loved disappear. I never saw her again. I never met my child. Elena's throat tightened. She turned the page. The next years chronicled Vittorio's descent. He'd tried to find Sofia, but she'd vanished completely. His father had resources Elena couldn't imagine. Sofia had been erased, hidden, possibly killed. The baby, a daughter, Vittorio had later learned, had been adopted through channels designed to leave no trail. Vittorio had thrown himself into the family business, becoming harder, colder, more ruthless. He'd married a woman his father approved of, had 3 sons, built an empire. But the journal entries continued, year after year, chronicling his search for the daughter he'd never met. 20 years of searching, 20 years of hiring investigators, following dead ends, finding nothing, until 3 years ago. Elena's hands began to shake as she read the entry. I found her. After all these years, I found her. She's alive. She's 28. She doesn't know I exist. She came to my house looking for work. She gave her name as Elena Moretti, her adopted family's name. She has Sofia's eyes, Sofia's smile, the same quiet strength that made me fall in love 30 years ago. My daughter walked into my home and I couldn't tell her the truth. The journal fell from Elena's numb fingers. No, that was impossible. She was Elena Moretti. Her parents were Marco and Teresa Moretti, kind people who'd adopted her as a baby and loved her until they died. She had documents, a birth certificate, a life. She couldn't be. But the memories came flooding back. Her adoptive mother's deathbed confession that Elena had been adopted through unusual channels. The lawyer who'd handled it suddenly dying, all records lost in a fire. The way Elena had never quite fit anywhere, always feeling like she was hiding who she really was. The way Vittorio Romano had looked at her tonight, like he was seeing a ghost. Elena grabbed the journal again, her breath coming in gasps. The rest of the entries detailed how Vittorio had watched her, learned her habits, verified her identity through DNA he'd collected from coffee cups and hairbrushes, confirmed beyond doubt that Elena Moretti was Sofia Reyes's daughter. His daughter. I hired her immediately. I paid her more than the position deserved. I made sure she had the night shift where she'd be safe from my family, my enemies, my world. I watched over her like I couldn't watch over her. Mother. I'm a coward again. I should tell her. But what do I say? Your real mother loved me and I abandoned her. I built an empire on blood while you grew up poor. I'm your father and I'm a monster. She's better off not knowing. She's better off staying invisible, staying safe from my world. When I'm gone, she'll be free. She'll never have to carry the Romano name, never be a target, never be corrupted by this life. It's the only good thing I can do for her. Let her stay free. The final entries were from the past few weeks, written in increasingly shaky handwriting as illness took hold. I'm dying. The irony isn't lost on me. I survived 40 years of gang wars, assassination attempts, federal investigations, and it's my own cells that are killing me. My sons will destroy everything I built fighting over it. My empire will collapse into violence, And Elena will be in the crossfire if anyone discovers the truth. I have to protect her one last time. I have to give her the choice I never gave Sophia. I have to tell her everything and let her decide her own fate. The last entry was dated today. Tonight I'll call for her. I'll give her the journal. I'll give her the envelope. Inside is everything she needs. Proof of her identity, DNA results, a trust fund I've been building for 30 years, legal documents that will protect her from my enemies, and a letter I wrote to her mother, the one I never sent, explaining everything. I'll give Elena the truth and one choice: walk away from the Romano world forever, wealthy and protected, or claim her birthright and fight for the Empire. I know what she should choose, but I also know that choice has to be hers. Sophia, if there's anything after this, I hope you can forgive me. I hope you know I never stopped loving you. I hope our daughter becomes everything we dreamed of being. I hope she chooses freedom. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun around her as 30 years of lies and secrets and hidden love crashed down on her invisible life. She was Vittorio Romano's daughter. The most feared mafia boss in the city was her father, and he was dying one floor above her. Her hands moved on autopilot, breaking the wax seal on the envelope. Inside was everything he'd promised: DNA results showing a 99.9% match, legal documents establishing her as his daughter, bank statements for accounts in her name containing millions, deeds to properties, letters of protection addressed to every major criminal organization in the city declaring her under Romano protection, and one letter, yellowed with age, addressed to Sophia Reyes. Elena unfolded it with trembling hands. My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll ask for it anyway. I was a coward. I let my father send you away. I chose my family's empire over you and our child. I chose wrong, and I've spent every day since then knowing I destroyed the only real thing in my life. I built an empire. I became powerful. I made men fear me. And none of it mattered because you weren't there to see it. Because our daughter grew up without knowing either of us. I've tried to protect her from the shadows. I've tried to keep her safe from my world. But in doing so, I've robbed her of the truth. If she's reading this, it means I finally found the courage to tell her everything. I hope she can forgive both of us for the choices we made. I never stopped loving you. Every ruthless decision, every cold calculation, every terrible thing I did, I told myself it was to build something that could protect our daughter if I ever found her. I was lying to myself. I just didn't know how to live without you. Tell our daughter I'm sorry. Tell her she deserves better than the Romano name. Tell her to choose freedom. Forever yours. Vittorio tears blurred Elena's vision. She thought of her adoptive parents who'd loved her unconditionally. She thought of her biological mother, Sophia, who'd been erased from history. She thought of Vittorio Romano, who'd become a monster while searching for redemption he'd never find. A knock on the door made her jump. Miss Moretti? Marco's voice. The boss is asking for you again. You should come now. Elena quickly shoved everything back into the envelope, her mind racing. She slipped it inside her jacket and opened the door, her face carefully neutral. Marco's expression was grim. It won't be long now. She followed him back to the master bedroom. The family had gathered outside, their faces masks of false grief. The suns still circled like vultures. The ex-wife looked bored. The lawyer clutched his briefcase. None of them looked at Elena. They still didn't see her. But when she entered Vittorio's room, his eyes found her immediately. She saw the question there, the fear and hope mixed together. She'd read it. She knew. Elena crossed to his bedside, and for the first time in 3 years, she let herself really look at him. She saw Sophia's eyes, the same color as her own. She saw the weight of 30 years of regret. She saw a father who'd been too afraid to claim his daughter until death forced his hand. Did you read it? He whispered. Yes. Do you hate me? The question was so vulnerable, so human, that Elena felt her throat close. I don't know what I feel. That's fair. He smiled weakly. You deserved better. Better than me. Better than Sophia's fate. Better than all of this. But you're here now, and I need to tell you something the journal couldn't. He gestured for her to lean closer. Elena did, and his next words were barely audible. There's a war coming. My sons will tear the Empire apart fighting over it. In the chaos, enemies will move. Blood will be spilled. His hand found hers, grip surprisingly strong. The envelope has protection papers, but they're only good if people know you exist. If you stay invisible, you're safe but vulnerable. If you claim your name, you're protected, but a target. What do you want me to do? Elena asked. I want you to choose. His eyes held hers. Walk away. Take the money. Start over somewhere far from here. Live the life Sophia and I dreamed of. Be free. But if you stay, if you claim your birthright, he paused, struggling for breath. There's evidence, documentation of every crime, every dirty deal, every corrupt official, things I've kept as insurance for 30 years. It's all in a storage unit. Key is in the envelope. With that information, you could destroy my enemies. You could clean up the empire. You could finish what Sophia wanted me to do. Go legitimate. Elena pulled back, shaking her head. I don't know anything about running a criminal organization. You know about being invisible, about surviving, about seeing what others miss. Vittorio's smile was sad. You're more capable than you think. And you have something my sons never had. A choice. You can walk away or you can fight. Either way, you decide your own fate. Sophia would have wanted that. The machines around them began to beep faster. Vittorio's breathing became labored. I don't have much time left, he gasped. Whatever you choose, know this. You were loved. Sophia loved you enough to give you up to keep you safe. I loved you enough to stay away. We made terrible choices, but they came from love. He squeezed her hand. Now make your choice, but make it for you, not for us. Elena's voice broke. I don't know what to do. Then trust your instincts. You've survived this long by seeing what others miss. So look at my family out there. Look at my empire. Look at the choice in front of you. And see the truth. He closed his eyes, his breathing slowing. Thank you for reading the journal. Thank you for hearing my side. Thank you for being the one good thing I ever helped create. His words were fading. You remind me so much of her. Sophia would be so proud of who you became. Wait. Elena gripped his hand tighter. I need to know. Did my mother? Did Sophia? Did she suffer? Vittorio's eyes opened one last time, filled with old pain. She died in childbirth, giving birth to you. My father made sure I knew. It was his final punishment for my defiance. The truth hit Elena like a physical blow. Her mother had died bringing her into the world, died alone, hidden, erased from history because she'd loved the wrong man. I'm sorry, Vittorio whispered. I'm so sorry for all of it. But I'll see her soon. I'll tell her you're safe. I'll tell her you're free to choose. I'll tell her... His voice faded. The machine screamed. Elena stood frozen as doctors and nurses rushed in, pushing her aside. She watched through a blur of tears as they tried to save a man who didn't want saving. Vittorio Romano died at 8:47 p.m., surrounded by medical staff and family who'd hated him, while the only person who knew the full truth stood invisible in the corner. The chaos erupted immediately. If you're hooked on this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the ending will blow your mind. But first, we need to see what Elena does next. The sons began shouting about the will. The lawyer tried to restore order. The ex-wife made a phone call, already planning her exit. Guards positioned themselves, choosing sides. Outside, Elena could hear more vehicles arriving. The power struggle had begun before Vittorio's body was even cold. Through it all, Elena stood motionless, the envelope burning like fire against her chest. She thought of the past 3 years, working night shifts, sending money to her adoptive mother until cancer took her too. making herself small, invisible, safe, never asking for more than survival. She thought of Sophia Reyes, 19 and idealistic, who'd tried to save a man from himself and paid with her life. She thought of Vittorio Romano, who'd built an empire on blood while searching for redemption in a daughter he couldn't claim. And she thought of the choice they'd given her. Walk away, take the money, be free, live the quiet life she'd always wanted, far from this world of violence and power. Or stay, claim her name, fight for an empire she never asked for but might be able to change. Miss Moretti. Marco appeared beside her, his voice surprisingly gentle. You should leave now. It's going to get messy here. Elena looked at him, really looked. He was one of the few guards who'd ever acknowledged her existence, who'd nodded to her in hallways, who'd made sure she got home safe on particularly dangerous nights. Marco, she said quietly, did you know? His expression shifted, surprise and respect mixing together. Know what? The truth. About me. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The boss told me. 3 months ago, when the cancer diagnosis came. He made me promise to protect you if anything happened. Said you were the only family that mattered. He paused. He loved you, in case that helps. It did and didn't. Elena's mind spun with possibilities and dangers. What happens now? She asked. War. Marco's answer was blunt. The sons will fight. Outside families will move in. The empire will collapse or transform. In 6 months, the Romano name might mean nothing. He looked at her seriously. Unless someone with a legitimate claim steps forward. Someone with Vittorio's protection papers and the strength to hold the territory. I'm a maid, Elena said. You're Sophia Reyes' daughter and Vittorio Romano's heir. Marco's voice was firm. You have a claim none of the sons can match if you wanted to fight for it. I don't know anything about this world. You know how to survive. You know how to see what others miss. You know how to be underestimated. He smiled grimly. That's more than the sons have. They're visible, predictable, hungry for power. You could take the empire before anyone realized you were in the game. The temptation was there, Elena realized. Not for power, but for purpose. For the chance to finish what her mother started, to transform something built on blood into something cleaner. But at what cost? I need time to think, she said. You don't have much. Marco glanced at the chaos around them. The lawyer will read the will tomorrow. If you're going to make a claim, you need to do it then. After that, it's war. Elena nodded and turned to leave. As she passed through the mansion one last time, she saw it differently. Not as a prison she'd been trapped in, but as a kingdom without a ruler. Empty, waiting. She thought of all the people like her, the invisible ones, the staff and workers and ordinary people crushed by the Romano Empire's weight. If she walked away, they'd suffer through the coming war. If she stayed, she might be able to protect them. Or she might become exactly what her father had been. A monster with good intentions who'd lost her humanity chasing power. The night air hit her as she stepped outside. She'd never felt so visible, so exposed. Every guard seemed to look at her differently now. Did they know? Had word spread? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Storage Unit 247 Harrison Street. Key in the envelope. Everything you need to burn it all down or build it back up. Your choice. V. He'd prepared for both possibilities. Evidence to destroy his enemies. Resources to claim his empire. All the tools, waiting for her decision. Elena walked 3 blocks before she realized where she was going. Not home. Not away. She was heading toward Harrison Street, to see what secrets her father had kept, to understand the full weight of the choice before her. The storage facility was in a quiet part of town, the kind of place that asked no questions. Unit 247 was in the back, climate-controlled and expensive. Elena used the key from the envelope, her hands steady now. Inside was a small room filled with filing cabinets and boxes, 30 years of information, evidence of murders, corruption, deals, and crimes, everything organized meticulously, as if Vittorio had always known someone would need it. On top of the nearest cabinet was another envelope, this one addressed simply to Elena. She opened it. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I've given you an impossible choice, and I'm sorry for that. But I need you to know why I kept all of this. Every piece of evidence here represents a moment I chose wrong, a crime I committed or allowed, a line I crossed. I kept it all as insurance, but also as penance, a record of my failures. If you want to walk away, use this to buy your freedom. Turn it over to the FBI, bring down the empire, walk away clean. If you want to stay, use it to clean house. Destroy the corrupt elements. Go legitimate like Sophia wanted. Build something better. Either way, the choice is yours. I stole your mother's choice. I won't steal yours. I loved you from the moment I learned you existed. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to say it while I was alive. Dad. The word broke something in Elena. Dad. He'd never gotten to hear her say it, never gotten to be a father except from the shadows. She sank to the floor among 30 years of secrets and cried for everything she'd lost. A mother she'd never known, a father she'd found too late, a life that could have been different if people had been braver. But she also cried for what she'd found. The truth, the choice, the chance to decide her own fate instead of having it decided for her. When the tears stopped, Elena stood and looked at the evidence surrounding her. Each box represented power, information, leverage, everything she'd need to either destroy the Romano Empire or transform it. She thought about Sophia, 19 and idealistic, trying to save a man from his own darkness. She thought about Vittorio, building an empire while searching for a daughter he'd abandoned. She thought about herself, invisible for 28 years, suddenly given the chance to step into the light. The choice wasn't easy. It would never be easy. If she walked away, she'd be safe, wealthy, free. She could start over somewhere her name meant nothing, live the quiet life she'd always wanted. She could honor her adoptive parents' memory by staying the person they'd raised her to be. But the Romano Empire would collapse into violence. People would die. The invisible ones, the staff, the workers, the ordinary people caught in the crossfire, would suffer. And the corruption Vittorio had documented would continue under new management. If she stayed, she'd be a target. She'd have to learn to navigate a world of violence and power she barely understood. She'd have to make impossible choices. She might become exactly what she feared, another Romano lost to darkness. But she'd have a chance to finish what her mother started, to transform something built on blood into something better, to protect the invisible ones because she'd been one of them. Elena pulled out her phone and texted Marco. Tomorrow, at the will reading. I'll be there. Tell no one. His response came immediately. Understood. This is going to shake the foundation. She smiled grimly. That was exactly what she intended. Elena spent the night in the storage unit, reading through 30 years of Romano family history. By dawn, she understood the empire's structure, its weaknesses, its enemies, and its opportunities. She understood why Vittorio had kept every piece of evidence, not just as insurance, but as a roadmap for someone brave, enough to use it. At 9 a.m., Elena walked into the Romano family lawyer's office. She'd changed from her maid's uniform into a simple black dress. Her hair was down. Her shoulders were back. She looked nothing like the invisible girl who'd scrubbed floors and avoided eye contact. The sons were already there, arguing over expected inheritance splits. The ex-wife sat calmly, knowing she'd get her portion regardless. Various family members and business associates filled the room, all waiting to see how the empire would be divided. They all fell silent when Elena entered. "What is she doing here?" the eldest son, Marcus, demanded. "This is family business." "She was requested to attend," the lawyer said, checking his notes with obvious confusion. Mr. Romano left specific instructions that Elena Moretti be present. The maid? The second son laughed. What did Dad do, leave her a watch or something? Elena said nothing. She simply took a seat in the back row, her expression calm. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the will. Assets were divided among the sons as expected. The ex-wife got her settlement. Various associates received small bequests. It was all standard, all boring, all exactly what everyone had anticipated. Until the lawyer reached the final page. His face went pale. There's a final provision. He looked up, his eyes finding Elena. A provision added 3 months ago, superseding all previous arrangements. The room tensed. I, Vittorio Romano, being of sound mind, hereby acknowledge that Marcus, Vincent, and Antonio Romano are my legal sons and entitled to portions of my estate as outlined above. However, I also acknowledge a daughter, previously unknown to the public, who carries equal legal claim to the Romano name and holdings. Chaos erupted. The sons were shouting. The ex-wife stood in shock. Associates began talking over each other. The lawyer raised his voice. The daughter in question is Elena Sofia Romano, née Moretti, biological child of Vittorio Romano and Sofia Reyes, born 28 years ago and given up for adoption. DNA verification and legal documentation are attached to this will and available for review. Every eye in the room turned to Elena. She stood slowly, her heart pounding, but her face serene. I am Elena Romano, and I'm here to claim my father's legacy. Marcus lunged toward her, fury on his face. Marco stepped between them, hand on his weapon. 2 other guards moved to flank Elena. You're lying, Marcus snarled. This is some kind of scam. The DNA results are conclusive, the lawyer said. I've reviewed them personally. Ms. Romano is Vittorio's daughter. Then she gets an equal split with us, Vincent said, already calculating. Fine. 4 ways instead of 3. We can work with that. There's more. The lawyer looked apologetic. The final provision states that Elena Romano is to be given first option on all business decisions. She has controlling interest in the Romano holdings until such time as she chooses to relinquish it. The room exploded. That's insane, Antonio shouted. She knows nothing about the business. She's been a maid for 3 years. This will is invalid. I want my lawyers. Through it all, Elena stood quiet and calm, watching, seeing, understanding. These men had grown up in power and never learned to fight for it. They'd expected inheritance, not competition. They were visible, predictable, weak. She'd been invisible her whole life. She'd learned to survive, to adapt, to see what others missed. Marco leaned close to her ear. Say the word, and we escort you out safely. Or say the word, and we make this official. Elena thought of Sofia, who'd tried to save a man from darkness. She thought of Vittorio, who'd built an empire while searching for redemption. She thought of the storage unit full of evidence and the choice her father had given her. She thought of the invisible people who'd suffer if this empire collapsed into war, and she made her choice. Gentlemen, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. I understand this is surprising, but the will is legal and the DNA is verified. I am Vittorio Romano's daughter and legal heir. You can't possibly, Marcus began. I know everything. Elena's words silenced him. Every dirty deal, every corrupt official, every crime committed in the Romano name for the past 30 years, my father left me documentation of it all. She let that sink in. I also know which of you have been planning to betray each other, which associates are waiting to move against the family, and which law enforcement agencies are building cases. The room went dead silent. So here's what's going to happen. Elena's voice was steady. We're going to sit down, all of us, and we're going to discuss the future of the Romano holdings. We're going to talk about going legitimate, about cleaning house, about building something our father would have been proud of instead of ashamed of. And if we refuse, Vincent challenged. Elena smiled, and it was Sofia's smile, Vittorio's calculation, and something entirely her own. Then I turn 30 years of evidence over to the FBI, and we all go down together. Your choice. The standoff lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Marcus sat down. Vincent followed. Antonio reluctantly took his seat. The war had been won before it started. Good. Elena remained standing. First order of business. Marco is promoted to head of security with full authority. Second, we're shutting down any operations that involve human trafficking, drugs, or exploitation. Third, we're going to start the process of legitimizing every business we can. The ones that can't be legitimized get sold or dissolved. That will cost us millions. Antonio protested. It will cost us less than federal prison, Elena countered. And it's what's happening. Dad gave me controlling interest. This is how I'm choosing to use it. She looked around the room at the shocked faces, at the family who'd never acknowledged her, at the associates who'd underestimated her, at the empire she'd just inherited. I was invisible for 28 years, she said quietly. I watched. I learned. I saw everything you all missed because you never thought to look at the Maid. Now you're going to learn what I can do when people actually see me. This is insane, Marcus muttered, but he didn't move. This is justice, Elena corrected. My mother tried to save my father from this life. She died trying. He spent 30 years building this empire while searching for redemption. Now I'm going to finish what they started. We're going to transform the Romano name from something people fear into something people respect. It won't be easy, the lawyer warned. There will be resistance. Other families will see this as weakness. Let them. Elena's smile was sharp. They'll be looking at my brothers, waiting for the power struggle, preparing for war. They won't be watching the invisible girl who spent 3 years learning every secret in this house. She paused. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. Marco caught her eye and nodded approval. A few of the guards smiled. Even some of the associates looked intrigued. Elena had learned from her father's mistakes. She wouldn't be a tyrant ruling through fear. She wouldn't be corrupt and violent. But she also wouldn't be weak. She'd be what Sofia and Vittorio had dreamed of. Someone strong enough to change the system from within. Smart enough to see the moves others missed. Brave enough to make the hard choices. She'd be invisible when she needed to be. And devastatingly visible when it mattered. Meeting adjourned, she said. We reconvene tomorrow at 9 a.m. I suggest you all spend tonight thinking about whether you want to be part of building something new or whether you want to go down with the old empire. Your choice. As the room slowly emptied, Elena stayed behind. The lawyer approached her with a mixture of fear and respect. That was quite the performance, Ms. Romano. It wasn't a performance, she said quietly. It was a promise. This empire destroyed my mother. It trapped my father. It won't trap me. I'm going to change it or burn it down. Either way, the Romano name will mean something different by the time I'm done. Your father would be... He searched for the word. Proud doesn't seem adequate. My father is dead. Elena's voice was steady. And I'm going to make sure his death meant something. That my mother's death meant something. That every person who suffered under Romano, violence gets justice or peace or both. She walked out of the office into the bright morning sun. For the first time in her life, Elena didn't try to make herself small. Didn't try to disappear. She walked with her head high, her shoulders back, claiming space in the world. Behind her, the Romano Empire waited. Ahead of her, the future sprawled out with infinite possibilities. She thought of Vittorio's last words, choose for yourself, not for us. She'd chosen, not the easy path of walking away, not the simple answer of revenge. She'd chosen the hardest thing of all, transformation, taking something broken and making it whole, honoring the past while building something new. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Impressive display. Several interested parties would like to meet. Are you accepting visitors? Elena smiled. Word traveled fast in this world. The vultures were circling, but they didn't know she'd already claimed the crown. She typed her response. Tomorrow, after the family meeting, and tell them to come prepared. The invisible maid is done playing small. As she walked through the city streets that her father had once ruled through fear, Elena made plans. The storage unit would be her weapon and her shield. The evidence would be her leverage. The family would learn to follow or get out of the way. The empire would transform or die. But either way, she would survive. She'd been invisible for 28 years. She'd survived poverty, loss, danger, and grief. She'd made herself small to stay safe. Now, she would make herself visible to create change. The most feared mafia boss in the city had died, leaving his empire to the maid no one noticed. And that maid was about to show them all what it meant to underestimate someone who'd spent a lifetime learning to see what others missed. Elena Romano walked into her new life with her mother's courage and her father's calculation. She carried 3 decades of secrets and a kingdom built on blood. And she was ready to burn it all down and build something beautiful from the ashes. In the end, Vittorio Romano didn't trust his empire to soldiers or sons. He trusted it to the daughter who saw him as human. And that daughter was about to change everything. If you've made it this far, you're probably as invested in Elena's story as I am. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you think she should do first with her new power. Should she go after the corrupt officials, clean up the family business, or something else entirely? And don't forget to subscribe, because Elena's transformation from invisible maid to crime boss is just beginning. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The invisible girl had finally stepped into the light, and the world would never be the same.